Wealth does not build gradually, it jumps. Long stretches where nothing seems to change, then a brief window where everything shifts at once. There are 3 of these windows, 3 specific thresholds that decide whether your money starts working for you or whether you keep working for it. Here is the first one, $10,000. Invested, not saved. That distinction is the entire first lesson, and most people spend years getting it wrong. Saving means the money exists. Investing means the money works. When your paycheck lands and you move $300 into a savings account, that money is resting. It is sitting in a chair watching television. When you move that same $300 into a retirement account or a broad index fund, it is deployed. It has a job. Over time, a working dollar and a resting dollar end up in completely different places. The problem is that most people treat a savings account balance like it counts toward wealth building. It does not. A savings account is where money waits. An investment account is where money compounds. Until you feel that difference in your actual behavior, not just in theory, you have not crossed the starting line yet. Now here is why 10,000 is the specific number that matters, and it is not philosophical. It is psychological, and the psychology is driven entirely by math. Below $10,000 invested, compound returns are functionally invisible. Put in $2,000 market, returns 8% for the year. You made $160. That is not nothing, but your brain does not register $160 as income generated by your money. It registers it as rounding error. Something shifts at $10,000. 8% on $10,000 is $800. $800 is a car payment. $800 is a number large enough that your brain finally says, oh, this is real. That registration, that moment when your returns feel like actual money, is the psychological ignition point for everything that follows. Before it, wealth building is abstract. After it, it is real. Most people never notice this line exists. They just wonder why they can never stay motivated. Here is what the zone between $0 and $10,000 actually feels like from the inside. You set up an automatic contribution, maybe $50 a week? You check the balance after 30 days. It went up 200 and some change. Okay, fine. Then your car needs brakes. $680. You pull from the account because there is nowhere else to pull from. You are back at $400, which is basically back at 0. You tell yourself you will restart next month. You do restart. 3 months later, same story. Different emergency, same result. This is not a discipline problem. This is a design problem. The zone is specifically brutal because compound growth is too small to feel too slow to see, and too fragile to survive a single bad month. Most people cycle through it for years, without understanding why they cannot get traction. I did this exact thing. Automated a contribution, felt responsible for about 90 days. Had one unexpected expense. Watched the account drain back to nothing. Told myself I was just not good with money. Restarted. Reset. Restarted again. 3 times. I was not bad with money. I just did not know the zone had a name or that there was a specific way across it. The way across is not more discipline. It is 2 mechanics working together. First, automate the investment contribution so your decision-making brain is never involved. The money moves before you see it. Second, keep a small, separate cash buffer not in your investment account specifically for emergencies, so a bad month does not automatically erase 3 good ones. Those 2 things together are what get you across. Not willpower, not a better mindset, just better plumbing. And once you cross it once, you have $10,000 sitting in the market, actually compounding the math, starts doing something that is worth paying attention to. $10,000 invested at 25.8% average annual return. No additional contributions ever becomes just over $100,000 by age 55. You cross the first milestone once, leave it alone for 30 years, it multiplies by 10. That is not motivation. That is arithmetic. Now imagine you keep contributing after crossing it. That is when the second milestone enters. And this is the one where people with genuinely good incomes quietly wreck their own financial futures without ever realizing it until the damage is already done. The second milestone is $100,000 in net worth. And the reason this number has a different quality than every number before, it comes down to one specific math fact. The journey from $0 to $100,000 contributing $500 a month at a 7% return takes roughly 11 years. The journey from $100,000 to $200,000, same contribution, same return, takes about 5.5 years. Half the time, same effort. Same $500 a month. The only thing that changed is the base. And somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000, something remarkable happens. Your annual investment returns begin to exceed your annual contributions. For the first time in your financial life, the money is doing more work than you are. You are no longer the primary engine. The portfolio is. That crossover is not a feeling. It is a mathematical event. It happens at a specific number, and when it does, the entire logic of wealth building changes. Here is where the milestone becomes a trap for almost everyone who reaches it. Hitting $100,000 feels like proof. Proof that the sacrifice worked, that the automated contributions were worth it, that you can finally exhale a little. And that feeling is not wrong. The problem is what it quietly triggers. A slightly nicer apartment, $300 more a month, reasonable for where you are now. A car lease because the old one is unreliable and you can handle the payment. $260 a month makes sense. Eating out a few more times a week because you have been disciplined for years and you have earned some comfort. Another $200 a month, give or take. None of these decisions is reckless in isolation. Every single one of them feels earned. But together, over about 8 months, your monthly investment contribution just dropped by nearly $800. And you did not make one bad decision. You made 9 reasonable ones. Run the math on that. If you hit $100,000 at 35 and quietly raise your monthly spending by $800 instead of holding your contribution rate, you will arrive at 55 with roughly $320,000 less than the version of you who held the line. Not because of a market crash, not because of a job loss, because the compounding engine reached operational velocity for the first time in your life, and you took your foot off the gas exactly then. That is, the trap. It does not look like a trap. It looks like finally living your life. The people who navigate this correctly do something that feels almost perverse when you first hear it. When they hit $100,000, instead of spending more, they invest more. Not dramatically more. Even 1 or 2% added to their contribution rate. They use the psychological momentum of crossing the milestone to accelerate, not celebrate. And before you say that sounds like a miserable way to live, understand what is actually being said here. This is not about never enjoying your money. It is not about living like a graduate student until you are 50. It is about understanding that the window immediately after $100,000 is the single highest leverage compounding period of your entire financial life. Every dollar that stays invested at this stage has more runway ahead of it than any dollar you will invest later. Pulling money out of the engine right now is not just a spending decision. It is a compounding decision. The version of you who increases contribution rate by 2% at this milestone and holds it for 10 years does not just end up with more money. They end up in a fundamentally different financial position than the version who celebrated by raising their lifestyle. One of them crosses the 3rd milestone in their late 40s. The other is still working toward the 2nd one at 52. Same income, same starting point. Different decision at one specific moment. Most people picture financial freedom as a number. A big one. $1 million, $2 million, some figure that feels permanently out of reach, which is convenient because it means you never have to think about it concretely. But financial freedom is not a savings number. It is a division problem, and most people are working on the wrong half of it. Here is what it actually means. Financial freedom is the point where your investments generate enough income to cover your non-negotiable monthly expenses without you ever having to trade your time for money. Again, that is it. That is the whole definition. No magic number, no secret threshold, just a ratio between what your portfolio produces and what your life actually costs to run. And here is the part that most finance content will not tell you directly. A person earning $60,000 a year with low baseline expenses can reach this milestone before a person earning $130,000 a year with high baseline expenses. Not because the lower earner invested smarter, because their finish line was closer. Financial freedom is not about how much you earn. It is about how much your freedom actually costs. Here is how the math actually works. There is a rule called the 4% rule. It estimates the annual amount you can withdraw from a diversified portfolio without running out of money over a 30-year period. 4% per year, which means to figure out how much you need invested to cover your baseline expenses forever, you take your monthly baseline, multiply by 12 to get the annual number, then multiply that by 25. Or the shortcut, multiply your monthly baseline by 300. If your non-negotiable monthly expenses, rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, transportation, basic obligations come to $3,000 a month, you need $900,000 invested. That sounds like a lot, until you run it against the alternative. Consider two people. First person earns $140,000 a year, good income by any measure, but their lifestyle has expanded to match it. Baseline expenses of $7,500 a month. They need $2,250,000 to reach Milestone 3. Second person earns $65,000 a year. Baseline expenses of $2,800 a month. They need $840,000. Same stock market, same index funds, same 8% average return. The lower earner reaches financial freedom first, not because they found better investments, because their number was smaller. Your baseline expenses are probably including things that feel completely non-negotiable right now but are not actually fixed. The streaming subscriptions you forgot you have. The car payment on a car you could replace with something cheaper. The apartment that is $300 a month more than you need. The gym membership that has been charging you since 2022. The version of those expenses you have right now is not permanent. It just feels that way. Every dollar you permanently remove from your monthly baseline expenses does two things simultaneously. It saves you that dollar every month going forward, and it reduces the total portfolio you need to reach Milestone 3 by $300. $1 out of your baseline is worth $300 off your finish line. That is the leverage nobody talks about, because it is not exciting. It does not involve picking the right stock or timing the market or finding a side hustle. It is just arithmetic applied to the right variable. Most people trying to reach financial freedom are focused entirely on growing the numerator. Bigger portfolio, better returns, more income. The people who get there fastest are the ones who also shrink the denominator. Remember Diane, 33 dental hygienist in Columbus, $61,000 a year. And Marcus, 36 project manager in Charlotte, $94,000 a year. Diane is ahead not because she earns more, not because she invests in something Marcus does not have access to, but because she calculated her baseline number years ago and made deliberate decisions to keep it low. Marcus has never once written down what his baseline expenses actually are. He has a vague sense that he is doing fine. Vague is expensive. A specific target changes behavior in ways that a general intention to be good with money never will. The version of you who knows their exact baseline number and knows exactly what portfolio size that number requires is not the same person as the version who is just trying to save more this year. 3 thresholds. $10,000 invested, which is where compound growth becomes real enough to feel. $100,000 in net worth, which is where the money starts doing more work than you do, and where most people accidentally stall by celebrating too early. And the point where your passive income covers your baseline expenses, which is not a number, it is a ratio, and it is closer than most people think once they start working both sides of it. That is the entire architecture. Everything else is detail. Marcus is not a cautionary tale because he earns too little or spends recklessly. He is where he is because nobody ever told him these thresholds existed, so he could not prepare for them, could not protect them, could not use them. Diane is not winning because she is exceptional. She is winning because she knew where the finish lines were before she started running. You now know where they are. The first milestone is not waiting for you to earn more or find a better job or have a year where nothing goes wrong. It is waiting for $10,000 to be deployed and left alone. That is the only entry requirement. The version of you who crosses it is not more talented or more disciplined than the version who does not. They just stopped treating that number like a distant goal and started treating it like the specific, concrete, urgent thing that it actually is.